Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Canada's podcast. I'm really pleased to have with me today Justin Sweeney. Justin is an entrepreneur. He's a social entrepreneur and all around just great guy who's doing some cool things in the entrepreneurial world out of Kings, New Brunswick. And that's really where I want to start the conversation today. But he's got some cool things happening with regards to two enterprises. And so let's start with regards to Kings. What's it like to live and work out of Kings, New Brunswick?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm right in Kings County, right? So I'm definitely a rural location. I'm a rural. I have this nice balance where I spend a few days a week in St. John, New Brunswick, where I'm kind of in the city. I'm at kind of hot desk style, co-working style space. Kind of set up a little differently each day. So I have that kind of really fun kind of entrepreneurial space that I get to spend a lot of time in. And the rest of the time is right here in Kings County. And it's I love people. I love being around people. But for re-energizing and, keeping my thoughts clear, being able to think, being able to, just find some time for myself. I've always been drawn to nature. So, my dream was always living in the woods. It was always brook running through the backyard, nice open kind of fields, being able to take my kids for walks and, not seeing neighbors and just, hanging out with the animals and the butterflies and all these kinds of really cool things. And so, our kids are 2 and 5 right now. So they're in prime. Nature is just wonder right now, right? So nature is the babysitter. And so that's what we went with when we selected this place. But we never anticipated we'd ever do any sort of business out of here. Like that was never the inclination, and that we would be doing a work from home. Like it was pure happenstance, right? It was a COVID evolution, and we suddenly transitioned into this like online mode for Bubbles and Bombs, and moved it into the house, and all of a sudden this work from home experience is. Like when the kids are little, it's been great, right? I don't know if we'll do it forever, but while they're pre-elementary, it's been awesome. So much more time together, such a less commute, right? They're able to spend a week at home here, right? Because we've got their grandmother living on site, so it's good. They're getting what we really hoped they'd get when we came back to New Brunswick in 2018.
Nice balance, man. Good for you. So let's dive into Bubbles and Bombs and kind of that story that started. I started with your wife Judith having challenges, if I could call it that, with regards to her skin. And that's what kind of gets you started on Bubbles and Bombs. Can you talk about that aha moment?
Yeah, it was absolutely. There's been a lot of aha moments along the way, because up until that point, we had I had dabbled in some things, but the concept of business and entrepreneurship were still very foreign, right? There was not a natural space for us to be in, I'll say. And what happened was we were, Maritimers. My wife has eczema. We moved to southern Alberta. Absolutely beautiful space, cowboy country for sure, just south of Calgary. Really enjoyable spot. But while we were out there, my wife's eczema flared up. And we had lost, we'd only been there a couple months. We were in a smaller town. We'd lost kind of the source for the types of very simple kind of skincare products that she was using.
Right.
So we used a couple others that weren't really labeled very well or accurately, I guess would be another way to put it.
Yeah.
And it just aggravated it and pushed it to a point where, she's looking at corticosteroids. Water suddenly became like an irritant. Like it would aggravate the situation and dry it out even further. So, she's bathing with a face cloth for like weeks at a time. Right. And we're just like, they're your steroids or there had to be a better solution. There had to be something better. Like we went to the pharmacy, the things that were there, like she just didn't feel comfortable with a lot of them. She was having sensitivity reactions to things that had any sort of dyes in it, anything that had any sort of fragrance in it. And so, like we were able to find like some simple unscented things finally, but it just really didn't fit the bill, right? Like it was hard. She couldn't build a full, routine. It was like, okay, I found one thing for my skin. Well, what do I do about my shampoo? What do I do about my conditioner?
Right.
And, so it was like this struggle over probably like 6 to 8 weeks, I would say, right? Like just this bathing with face cloths, reading about ingredients and stuff. And, it was super old school. Her and her mother ended up going to the library and just got like a stack of these books and brought them back and was like, we got to figure out like how to make a couple of the things that we were using before. And so it just started out with like this whipped cocoa butter that she used on her skin. And it started to like, basically just immediately started to replenish the barrier is what it was doing, right? So it was really starting to just provide an opportunity for the skin to really heal. And so it was, for me, she's doing this, she really gets into it. She's like doing all the ingredient research. She's starting to make things. As soon as you start to make things, you have more things than what you can actually do with. So you're giving them away to other people. And like, I couldn't get over the number of people within our immediate like vicinity, like I'll say like friends, family, people we were just talking to, people we could give stuff away to, who were like all of a sudden just sharing their complaints and their concerns about their skincare, right? So, some with rosacea, others are like, I have eczema the whole time. I didn't even realize I was like 27 at the time. I just thought I was itchy all the time in the winter. I thought it was something wrong with me. I never put two and two together that I had an issue with some of the cleansers, like the very super cheap body wash I was going in and buying in bulk type thing, right? Whatever was on sale. And I just wasn't putting two and two together that I needed a back scratcher every night because of the stuff I was putting on my skin, right? It was like, and so that was the aha. It was like, holy, this is a bigger issue. And it seems so weird to us that there wasn't like a brand that seemed to just speak exclusively to this audience. Like there were, a handful of products here and there, but we just said, okay, well, let's start building out some products based on what we're doing. And then everything from there was just an adventure. I'll tell you, I thought I was ready. I still remember like just feeling like we can make a few products. And I bought a cash register at the Walmart. And so I'm pretty much ready to do business. Like that was pretty, that was it. I didn't know if I was going to need anything else. I'm like, we're going into this, we're going to have this all figured out. And so, that was basically like the kickoff moment, man. That's when we just realized there was an opportunity, there was a need. We had a passion, we had a purpose behind it. And so we just started having fun with it, right? Right from the get-go, we just said we were practicing. We didn't put a lot of pressure on ourselves because, like I said, we just didn't have the background or experience to feel like we were going to shoot off out of a cannon as we were doing this. But we just said, well, let's just start going one step at a time, right? A little better each day and build it from there.
So let's talk about that part of your journey. You got the aha moment. You were with Judith and your mom-in-law. She was involved, obviously, going to the main librarian. And, talk about those first 6 months in business where you started to make some money or at least get some movement happening, that you started to say, this is something we got to dig even deeper into.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of evolved in a couple different ways, right? Like I would say like there's almost been 3 iterations of the company, from the first days. So iteration 1 is this, 2014, very end of the year. First 6 months were like, basically what we said was we had time because we had just moved to Alberta. I had actually passed on what I would consider to be like the safe choice of continuing my career in post-secondary education. I had passed on that and had taken up an opportunity learning how to restore antique Jaguars, actually. And so I was doing this for about 8 weeks when the price of oil just absolutely tanked. And everybody suddenly just got really kind of, everyone pulled back on the hobby projects, right? Those are the first things everybody's cutting. And so that opportunity kind of dried up. And, Judith had been making some of these products and, the sharing and the response was really positive. We had gone to a couple farmers markets, that was totally like, sales was really uncomfortable. Sales and marketing for us was really uncomfortable. It was not nature that we would put ourselves out there. We're very introverted by nature. So that's been a lot of that's been an area we've had to develop. But I saw that the products were good. They were responding. People were coming back and buying more, right? They were buying at the farmers market. They come back and buy more. We had quite a stock in inventory. It was like right around November at this point in time. And we said, well, let's just hustle up and see if we can find a spot to just put the product in for a month, right? Let's try to, we've got the busy holiday season coming up. Let's just see if we can find a cubby hole to rent, so to speak, right? And we're really planning beyond that. It was very much that 1 month at a time. I happen to not be working right now. We have product. We have the holiday season. We have an audience who's responding. Let's give it a shot. And so this was like the trip to Walmart to get the cash register and you put a float in there, a couple $100 and we're just about ready to go. And so we were, one thing that we had that was this, I guess, we were a little bit ahead of the curve on a lot of this downtown redevelopment that we see happening pretty heavily now. 2014, downtown in the small rural town we were in, vacancy rates 30%, right? So plenty of spots. We just, found somebody who was willing to let us take over, a location month to month. And it was kind of within range. So yeah, we kind of bootstrapped the opening with about a couple $1,000, I think, a month's rent. I'll tell you this. I remember it was like Pinterest threw up all over the inside of this place. Every Pinterest project you could ever imagine. We had to come up, even for chalkboards, we were like, oh man, we're running low on, we don't really spend any more money. Well, we had all these cardboard boxes. So we took these cardboard boxes and painted them with chalkboard paint. And we put, this kind of tool around the outside of it to make it look like something and attached it to the wall and wrote on it. And so it was really scrappy because like I said, we thought we're going to run this for the holidays. God only knows if this is going to go into January, February and beyond. And so we made an agreement with one another, we'll just take this month by month, right? We'll open in December, and we opened December 3rd, 2014. And at the time, we did it as a natural goods store because we had our products, but we didn't have enough. So I ran around the markets and grabbed 3 other people that were making things that we thought were really cool and said, hey, we'd like to have your stuff in here. And then we brought in a natural chalk paint line after that eventually, and a line of honey, and so kind of built it out that way. But yeah, so we launched December 3rd, and I remember at the end of December we were yeah, we got enough to do this for 4 more months. Let's just keep going, right? Let's just see how this works. And we didn't know how it would work January, February, March, but I think the community responded so well, right? And I think that's one of the advantages sometimes of doing something in a smaller place is it gets noticed maybe a little bit easier.
Yeah, right.
There was just such an appreciation that somebody was doing something different, right, in the downtown. And so I think that really worked in our favor. We built community really fast. And we just had a lot of, kind of playful fun with it. But I would say those first 6 months, I've always, almost at every stage, thought I knew more than obviously I did, right? And so it's, you don't quite set things up properly, and
what are some lessons you've learned in those first 6 months or first year?
100%. Like the cost of working with an accountant on getting your books set up properly just from the get-go and not having to kind of learn processes and work back through that stuff. Like that was an area, like we tried to save money by doing everything ourselves, right? You're like, I'm going to do the accounting work. I'm going to do the marketing. I'm going to create the content. I'm going to build the website. And it is like, there are moments where that stuff's rewarding, but there's, as you continue and progress, like it's not possible and it's not feasible. And so like getting to understand, where are there areas where I add value and where are there areas I don't add value. I don't add value to content creation and I don't add value to bookkeeping. I add value to interpreting the statements when they're accurate and making sound strategic decisions on those statements.
Right.
So I add value there, and I add value when we look at our marketing strategy and we kind of review overall, okay, what content's performing, what's underperforming. Okay, let's continue to kind of move in a new direction. That's where I like to spend my time, right? But I do that probably because I tend to have a more strategic, systems-oriented mind. So I like, I can work at that level because I like to go pretty deep on things, but you don't need to go deep on your content. You know what I mean? Like you just need to put some content out, do it quick. And I watch other people do it. And I'm like, how do you do that so fast? Like when I have to create content for myself, it takes me all day to schedule, 4 posts for next week. Is real value in me spending my time there. So that the biggest lesson was that, just understanding value, like true cost, assigning like a value to my time, right? And saying, look, you know what, there's a value to my time. And in some areas, I get a better return on that investment than others. And so, I want to hunker down in those areas because where we can normally get better ROI is in, areas that drive more revenue, right? Like the cost mitigation by, handcuffing myself to content creation was never worked very well for us, right? We still did it for years, but those were the things that finally and part of that was education. Like going into it with zero education, you feel kind of nervous, right? Because you're like, you're wary of the mistakes you're going to make. And so, you're wary of spending too much money and over investing. And so we, in hindsight went really slow. We did a lot of things ourselves. But we learned a lot of things. I mean, the one benefit I would say that comes out of going slow and doing it that way is I'm much more confident now when somebody else tries to sell me something. So if you're trying to services or you're trying to sell me marketing services, I know enough that I can tell if you're full of shit. So that really is like a huge benefit, I think, of kind of going that road. But yeah, I would say those were some of the biggest lessons, like just identifying what really drove the revenue, where we added the value and the return to the company, and then not finding the right people to work the other responsibilities.
How many SKUs do you have right now?
We're at 46 SKUs right now.
Is that right? Wow, good for you. And it's all. Do you have a spot in St. John or anything like that you sell your products?
Yeah, it's been a lot of learning, right? So, I mean, we had the natural goods store out west. 2018 came around. We sold that as like an asset sale, right? We let a friend take that over, but we retained our brand and our products, right? So we pulled that out, gave the store to them. Then we launched December 2018 in Uptown St. John. When we initially had done that push, we were very bricks and mortar oriented. The plan was 100% a multi-location strategy. We were already starting to evaluate Charlottetown, Halifax. Like we were just looking at like East Coast. We were looking at tourism-driven locations. We had a better understanding of boutique operations based on what we did out west, right?
Right.
So we started out with that. Of course, 14 months later, COVID arrives, and we're like, we had 4 staff by that point, right? So you're thinking, God, you want to try to keep the staff busy and keep them going. So like we did the pivot to online, and 2020 to 22, those 2 years was 100% committed to understanding, learning, and adapting to a online digital first environment for us as a direct to consumer company. And we actually eliminated, because when we're in physical bricks and mortar, you just pump out product that sometimes aren't even the best quality product, but you just have shelf space to fill, right? You've got to fill the audience. So like, I'm going to add some SKUs here, and I'm going to, retail my own line of essential oils. And so when we were in the boutique, we were closer to 200 SKUs because we had like just a whack of different, more creative, like kind of packaging and things like that. Because we had a fixed audience in a fixed space. We weren't working digitally, and we didn't have to really kind of niche down, to expand and be a lot of things to the people who happen to be there. So we stuck to our motif of still formulating specifically for dry and sensitive skin. That's always kind of been at the core and the center of everything. And again, eco-minded and sustainability and things like that. But when we transitioned online, it's been a process of scoping back, right? Because I think the biggest lesson there was the importance of understanding your value proposition in order to be able there's so much noise online that in order to stand out, you really don't want to be, that group with 200 okay-ish SKUs, right? Like you really need to niche down into the things that you do exceptionally well. And so that's been the process. And so now we're at like 48, what we started in, or 46, 48 SKUs, 8 product types, right? So a lot of it's aromatic variation. So, it's 8 product types, 8 manufacturing processes that are slightly different. And we still do all of our manufacturing on site. 2022, we had gotten the catalog, the value prop, the brand, everything was to the point where we felt comfortable starting to work with retailers, and we started to push out into that audience. We picked up 35 locations pretty quick within the first few months here in Maritimes. It's great. We got everything out there, and we almost immediately started to hit challenges about 6 months later, because all of our packaging, all of our thoughts, everything we've always done has been for our own direct-to-consumer channels. It was never thinking about the amount that it's going to get beat up in transit, getting onto a retailer shelf, getting picked up, put back down again. I mean, we always controlled that whole environment, right? So we were able to turn our inventory really quickly. So we never had material or products sitting on the shelf 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And so we had, part of our ethos was to be sustainably minded. So we had brought on like a completely compostable packaging, and it was great. Love the compostable packaging, does what it's intended to do. But the problem is it's paper-based packaging, and we make an product. It fits most of the time, but the packaging was a little bit poor quality. Some of the seams weren't perfect. And so after about 6 months or so, you'd start to see staining on the outside of the packaging from the product material actually like bleeding out through, right? So it was, it really kind of stalled a lot of things, though it was, because we had to respond. We had to be able to, refresh and make sure that retailers were getting what they had invested for. It challenged us relative to our distributor, because we were thinking like they were holding like way too much material and product at one given time.
Right.
Sitting on things for too long. I mean, it's just, it's things that we're learning. I mean, we work with purely like natural ingredients and aromatics. And so we sell by smell. Like, we're known because of our ability to basically include light natural aromatics from a variety of sources, botanicals, unrefined butters, some oils, and still be a good fit for dry and sensitive skin, right? That's a big part of our value. And so those aromatics, they oxidize, which basically means they're natural. They're going to fade with some time, right? And so like we're like, okay, so now we're learning a little bit more about just kind of the inventory management strategies. And some locations work better than others, right? Like just, we were pretty open initially as far as like pretty agnostic, like, gift shop, pharmacy, we were kind of working across the board, but we've tightened back. Actually, we trimmed back a fair bit. We're now kind of going almost more with like an authorized dealer model. Like it's really where we'd have like a much deeper relationship with more a regional representative who carries and can communicate the full brand and line. But what that also enables us to do is have a much closer relationship so we can help with managing the inventory. Ensuring that instead of retailers bringing on like 3 to 6 months worth of inventory, let's keep a smaller amount. Let's refresh on a monthly basis. Let's revisit, quarterly to see what's on the shelf. Is anything aging? Is anything, is first product impression fading in any way? And then we're doing a lot more in coaching as well for the retailers, right? And it helps us with our focused marketing strategy as well. So we've got St. John, we've got a Fredericton depot set up. We're setting up another one in St. Stephen. Like that's a big part of what we're doing this year in 2023 is really, kind of transitioning more into that authorized dealer model and sourcing some new packaging.
Well, that all sounds like an interesting journey, an exciting one, and one that you take with the proverbial grain of salt. If you go through it, it's you accepted it as learning rather than frustration, and it's going well for you. Congratulations on your journey with Bubbles and Bob's. It sounds really like it's driven by definitely all the things you talk about, but also along the way. So congratulations on all of that.
No, I appreciate that, Rivers. There's a lot of times where you question yourself and you question about, whether or not you should be doing this. And, has it been too long? Do we really try another pivot on this? But at the same time, I also recognize like there's a skill and a technique. I would say, especially in my wife, who's been full time in the company since 2015, like I've spent a lot of time outside of the company, and I think we'll get to that here shortly, right? But build up an expertise and a knowledge when you're serving like one specific customer segment with one specific aspect of their daily care routine, right? Like you're when you're all about, the cleansing, the exfoliating, the conditioning, the moisturizing of skin for people for dry and sensitive who have dry skin, sensitivity skin, eczema. You build up a knowledge base and a capacity over 9 years of doing that. And that's the piece that I know for me a lot of times keeps me going because, I see how it impacts people and you don't really think about it too much, but kids can be cruel. If a kid has eczema on their face, there's a lot, like some of the bullying stories that we've heard about skin concerns and challenges they have. Parents at their wits' end because they can't put their kid in the bath. The kid is screeching and hollering and will have nothing to do with the water because it hurts. It hurts. It's these are, it goes beyond, I've got a little itch on my skin, which for me, that's what it mostly was. I was dry. I was scratching my back a lot, but, that was almost the extent of my challenges with the dryness aspect. But, when I started to hear more of the stories and then understood more of how, through this insight and, the comfort and the familiarity really helps to, help with the transition and the transformation for these people as it relates to their comfort in their own skin. It's that part is motivating. That part is really motivating. And that's the part we want to get that really 100% spot on correct. Because if we can, then that's the long-term growth. This is a saturated market, right? So we've got to be able to do that one thing just expertly. And I think we're there right now. It's just a matter of just really rolling out the model that the model's working. Everything's working for us right now. We just need to, and I think we're past our hiccups on the inventory and packaging and some of this other stuff that's kind of held us up a little bit, right? But I'm excited to see where it goes. And
that's awesome, man.
Her name's got to get bigger. Her name's got to get bigger. She's people are going to know her. Judith Sweeney.
Nice. Love it. I love it. So let's talk about Kaleidoscope in the affordable housing world. Let's get back to that aha moment. What started with that focus?
Yeah. So something we talk about in Bubbles and Bombs, and that I talk about a little bit more and more every as time goes on, is like our sensitivities and experiences with sensitivities kind of go well beyond our skin, right? So we've had some chronic mental health conditions and challenges that we've kind of worked through. Found out at 38 that I have a neurodiversity. I'm currently 38, so it's been pretty recent. It's, and so, you know, learning how to live with that has been really challenging. I've had the benefit of, you know, loving parents. Like I should say, learning how to live with some of these things when you didn't know about them and you didn't know it was going on, and you were just doing things normally or as you thought would be normal.
Right.
You know, it was like, you know, by the time I was 11 or 12, all the men that I knew in my family were they were all self-medicating one way or the other. I just assumed that was going to be a part of my life as I continued to get older, right? And so, you know, there was a lot of alcohol problems, I would say drug and alcohol problems through my teens and into my 20s. You know, even once I got off drugs, like the anxiety challenges that were still there after that, because I just wasn't like, you know, I need some of that downtime, like that Kings County time. I need that Kings County time where I can just unplug for a couple days every week, just get myself back to ground, like just get grounded again. Because when I'm like in a space where I don't have good routine, or if I'm just kind of, you know, running from thing to thing, or you know, chasing the next exciting thing, I can end up just, I ended up going into some dark places, right? So, you know, I came out on the other side after, you know, kind of hitting a rock bottom around 27 and steadily improved my life, you know, bit by bit through, you know, personal development. A lot, stoicism was a big thing for me. Finding stoicism and kind of baking that into my daily routine was a big thing with overcoming it. But a lot of friends and family didn't, right? So I've unfortunately, you know, buried, you know, two uncles, a cousin, my best friend, my wife's father. You know, all men, all guys who had kids and, you know, left way too early. And that's always weighed on me really heavily. And I've always wanted to be able to help there more. So even when I went and did like an undergrad, my undergrad degree was in psychology because I already knew there was stuff going on. Let's try to figure out what it is. That's not a good idea because then you self-analyze with every possible situation you can come up with. So, but you know, I always wanted to do something because what I saw, I was lucky. I grew up with loving parents who worked hard. And so I had what I believe was a really good childhood, but I watched cousins and others kind of grow up in what I would call like the intergenerational poverty space where, you know, they're on assistance, their parents are on assistance. You know, the places that they're living in don't feel even livable, right? You know, when you go in, the aroma to some of these places, you're just kind of struck by how some people are living right here, kind of in your backyard. You know what I mean? It's not a far out place. It's, you know, 3 doors down sometimes, right? And so I remember seeing that and just feeling like, you know, a kid with a big heart, that there was just a lot of injustice in the world. And I think that was, you know, when you're young, I lashed out. I was, you know, anti-establishment, anti-police, you know, because I disliked, I was resenting, you know, the system because of the system, in quotes, right? Stuff. And so when I was out west and was working, and so while Judith and I were growing Bubbles and Bombs, I also was offered and took the role of the economic development officer for the community that we were working. And so as I was doing that, I was introduced for the first time to the concept of social enterprise, which as I saw it was really just a supportive employment model using a very simple business structure. In this scenario, it was like a used clothing store to give kind of transitional employment experiences for people who had, chronic mental health, right? Depression, anxiety, who were uncomfortable, maybe taking on 8 hours at a time, needed 2 hours or 4 hours or a little bit of time to kind of transition in. And that was really interesting to me because until that moment in my life, it was, there is business and commerce and economy and all the things that happen here. And there is, charity and charitable giving and, all the not for profit and you need to be a martyr and accept lifelong poverty if you're going to do work on that side. Right. That was, I think, the dichotomy that I understood that the world operated within. And so to find out about social enterprise was like, oh, wow, like these tools and these things that work really, really well for wealth generation and creating employment and raising people up, which is, we can try to maybe purposely apply these to some of our social challenges. And so that was my aha moment. That was my, oh, shit, this could change some things, right? Like this is a thing. And so in 2018, about a year after I was helping that group, we were moving back to New Brunswick, and I found an organization called the St. John Community Loan Fund, which is now Kaleidoscope Social Impact. And so I found that organization and the co-founder who had been there for 17, 18 years, Seth Asimakis. And so they were bringing somebody on to kind of work on this really kind of like cobbled together role where it was like going to have to do some social finance activity. So like micro lending and stuff like that. So was going to have to do some of that, but I was also going to have to do some like real estate redevelopment for affordable housing and stuff. So maybe do some project management for construction. But I just saw it as this opportunity to explore further this idea of like social good paired with, business activity or finance, right? And again, I didn't have a background in any of this. I've always been super, super lucky that people have seen something in me and given me an opportunity to do things. Because, I definitely on paper probably was not the best social finance expert at that point in time. So, right. So, but I had done things. I had built an economic development department. Within that, I created a kind of like a small business center. So, I built tangible things. And so I think that's what was seen when I went in, for that opportunity. And so I got on there. And since then, I really leaned very heavily. Like I spend my time right now, the last 5 years has been really 50-50 between Bubbles and Bombs and Kaleidoscope. With Kaleidoscope, it's all about building what we've termed the New Brunswick Social Impact Fund. So the idea is basically a very nimble, flexible pool of capital that could be held in the charitable sector and made available to those who are doing social good in the province of New Brunswick.
Right.
So in the form of loans, right? And so mostly loans. So that's the idea behind it. What was great was I came in and there was no idea when I arrived in 2018. The lending activity had always been micro lending. The pool at that time, I think we had a few $100,000 when I arrived. It had really kind of stalled, and so I got in there, and my job was, as we got going, we realized was to identify the investment thesis and what are the opportunities? How would this work? If we were going to do things. And so, started with social enterprise because that's what I was familiar with, and had the experience of, building a financing program for social enterprises and social entrepreneurs. And so it is literally as entrepreneurial as you could imagine. Like we just had the idea. I remember calling FCNB, so the Financial and Consumer Services of New Brunswick, and get an appointment and had a meeting. I think they had 5 of their representatives at the meeting. because I was telling them what I was doing and was like, is this legal? Like, can I do this? Can I just go out and do this stuff? And they're like, well, we can't really tell you one way or the other, but they were super generous in that they pointed me towards all of the pieces of legislation that we would need, right, as we were kind of going through. And then, I stumble across like a charitable lawyer who kind of understands a little bit about fund activity and fund structure. And you just kind of cobble one piece together with another one, and try to continue, building on what you want to see, right? So we had no idea how big of an opportunity there would be, how big the pool could get. We just, could we build something that was sustainable and could operate on its own and could kind of be there into perpetuity. And so that's what we're trying to do. It started with the micro lending. We added social enterprise. We realized, New Brunswick's a small province. There's only so much social enterprise activity happening. So in other terms, like deal flow was not significant. And so we were working on this small little 2-unit. Like I've only ever had to oversee one little real estate project or affordable housing project out of this. And it was 2 units in St. John. And I realized very quickly that I'm not a project manager for real estate. That is not my expertise or my forte. But it was really enjoyable, and I learned a lot. And I talked with other developers, and I realized how burdened they were in trying to get projects up and going. Like it wasn't that there wasn't ideas. It wasn't that people didn't want to get activity going. It was like if a key piece of property came online, most not-for-profit housing developers can't jump on it because they don't have a lot of liquidity sticking, just kind of hanging around. And the other thing is that, a lot of these associations have been around for quite a while. So, the boards, a lot of them didn't even have experience with, doing new development, right?
Right.
A couple key challenges there. One's capacity, one is finance or the funding. And so we went after the finance and funding aspect. And basically what I did was created an investment thesis in 2020 around the idea of using affordable housing lending and projects as an anchor asset in a kind of like a multi-asset portfolio. So basically saying, look, if we do, 70% of our activity in this affordable housing space, it's going to allow us to, this is how big of an opportunity it is. We'll be able to hit a fund size of 10 million or higher, which has kind of always been the marker of sustainability for like being able to, for the way our fund model works. 10 million is sustainable, right? You cover your staff, you cover everything you need to do. We put that investment thesis together. We submitted it to a big foundation named McConnell Foundation out of Quebec. It was accepted as one of 9 from across the country for the Solutions Finance Accelerator. Basically, they layered us with a bunch of support and fund managers and fund developers and legal support and accounting support from people who really know what they're doing from across the country.
Nice.
And it was awesome, right? Like it just allowed us to build out our business case really well. We found great student supports in an organization called Propel Impact, which is a national organization, works with some of the leading kind of social entrepreneurship, social finance minds currently in undergraduate universities across Canada. So we had a number of them come on at different periods to help us with a lot of the market analysis and basically just building out the business case for both sides of the fund. We just, kind of continued to piece it together from there. I believe with the arrival of COVID, things really changed about a year in, because all of a sudden everybody seemed to recognize how precarious our housing situation really is.
Right.
We hear a lot about it now, National Housing Strategy, CMHC, Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation's back in the game and doing lots of big lending to get these projects up and going. And so what we do is we provide that really hard first bit of capital, right? We come in and we help with stuff like some pre-development activities, but we help a lot with acquisition, right? So we can help with a quick acquisition. which can help when an opportunity comes up that for a new piece of land, but also helps when you have affordable units that are going on the market that might be lost to an open market and seeing some challenges there. So yeah, that's been a journey, man. And so we are like at this point we're not at 10 million. But I will say that in the first 2 months of 2023, we've approved just over $1 million in lending, and we have leveraged out of that it's amazing the leverage we get because we're such a small check in the big size of things, right? We're getting like 10 to 12 X as far as the size of the project, over our contribution to the project. So yeah, we're a little over $1 million out, but I think out of that, off the top of my head, we've leveraged, I believe, 60 new units and the acquisition and conversion of 180 units into a cooperative ownership.
That's awesome. So
yeah, it is it's working. It's tiring, dude. It's tiring. That's super meaningful. Like my one favorite story was like the 2 units that I actually renovated. Because I had, my daughter at the time's like a year old. I'm like a goo goo gaga dada. Like I just love the whole dad world. Like it's a big, it brings a lot of happiness to me, a lot of joy. And so in those 2 units, there was a young man, probably about 26, who was going to be taking one of the units. And I just remember the look on his face as he was like setting up his daughter's bedroom. And I was like, you look so excited. And he's like, my daughter's going to be able to stay with me for the first time. Like that was it. Like he didn't have a stable living situation. He wasn't allowed to see his daughter. This housing unit was going to change all that.
That's cool.
That was, that's a tingle moment, right? That you're like, oh, I get it. I could get hooked on doing more of that stuff.
Well, you're doing awesome stuff, man. And thank you for taking us down the story of Kaleidoscope. I could speak for hours on to what it is you're doing. But the attention span of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I know.
So, Justin, I just want to thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing your stories, sharing your journeys, sharing your lessons, and sharing your love for what it is that you're doing and the results that are coming from that. So we're glad you're back in New Brunswick. We're glad you're here doing the magical things that you're doing, and keep on making them happen, my man. Thanks so much for being on Canada's podcast, the Atlantic Canada version.
Rivers, I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me run on in my answers a time or two. Definitely the biggest thing. Thanks for letting me explore both worlds in this conversation. I was glad to be there.